This happened just a few months ago. I'm 32 and have been a paramedic for a while. The night shift at the hospital wasn't anything new for me. But that night felt different. It stuck with me. My first round was routine. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I turned a corner and saw an empty gurney in the hallway. I thought maybe someone had rolled it there. Then it moved just a little, a few feet. It rolled slowly, stopping outside the supply room. I felt a chill creep up my spine. But I shrugged it off, thinking it was the uneven floor. Hospitals can be strange spaces. Later that night, around 2, I sat at the nurse's desk. I was going over charts when I heard faint voices coming from room 304. I got up to check, but the room was empty. No one inside. I felt uneasy. Maybe I was just exhausted. Then things got weirder. One night, I found an altered patient chart. The notes made no sense. I decided to investigate. I walked to the rooms, my heart racing. In one room, I saw a figure in scrubs. They slipped into a locked room at the end of the hall. I rushed to follow. When I tried the door, it wouldn't budge. I pounded on it, yelling, but it was quiet. Standing there, I felt cold. I stared at that door. What was going on? I turned to leave when I heard the voices again. They were closer now, echoing down the hall. I looked around, expecting someone to jump out. But there was nothing. Just darkened walls and empty rooms. I felt trapped, as if something held me there. Each night, the odd occurrences piled up. My shifts blurred together, and I started leaving notes for myself. Was I losing my grip? The feeling of dread sat heavy in my chest. I doubted my own sanity. Then one night, I noticed the figure again. They stood at the end of the hall, staring at me. I sprinted after them, but when I got closer, they vanished. Just like that. I gasped, my throat tight. I opened my mouth to call out, but no words came. What the hell? I whispered to myself. I felt lost in that haunted place. The voices grew louder, swirling in my head. I decided to get some fresh air. I stepped outside. The night felt heavy with silence. Days passed, and I couldn't shake those experiences. My coworkers noticed I was off. "You okay, Jake?" One of them asked, concern in their eyes. "Yeah, just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. But deep down, I felt something was wrong. The last night I worked there, I walked down the empty hall, my heart racing. I prepared for the night, but I couldn't ignore the sensation creeping back. A figure appeared again in my peripheral vision. I turned nothing. The chilling voices whispered through the air, and in that moment, I knew I'd never truly leave. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I wasn't meant to know. But every corner of that hospital held a mystery I didn't want to uncover. As I left for the last time, I looked back, wondering what I'd seen or if it was just the shadows playing tricks on me. I still don't have answers, but I can't forget. I tried to move on after that last shift. I thought changing things up would help. A few weeks later, I settled into a new job at a different hospital. The transition was what I needed, or so I convinced myself. It was a fresh start. But shadows lingered. At night, whispers from that old place crept into my mind. I pushed them away, focused on my new environment. The lights here buzzed too, but they felt more welcoming. Still, every time I walked the hall, I felt the prick of eyes watching me. I chalked it up to my imagination. Then, one night during a slow shift, I received a call from the emergency room. A patient came in, and they needed my help. I headed down, ready to get back into the groove. As I entered the room, a sense of familiarity washed over me. The layout, the equipment, it wasn't that different from my old hospital. I shivered, shaking my head. As I worked, I couldn't help but steal glances at the patient. He had a blank stare and was mumbling quietly. I leaned in to listen closer, but the words spilled out as a jumbled mess. I reached for the chart on the end of the bed, but it was missing. I turned to Nurse Tara, a familiar face. "Where's the patient's chart?" I asked. Her brows furrowed. "There's no chart for this one. He came in without any documentation," she replied, her voice steady. "Really? That's odd," I said, feeling a knot in my stomach. Before I could say more, the patient's mumbling grew louder. I leaned closer again. Help me," he whispered, eyes darting beneath closed lids. My heart raced. It felt all too similar to the voices I had heard before. I stepped back, unease washing over me. "What do you mean?" I asked. My mind flashed back to those dark nights at my old hospital. The voices. The figure. I had to know more. "His condition is strange," Tara said, her brow still furrowed. "He keeps repeating those words, but we can't find anything medically wrong with him." A chill ran down my spine. Then it hit me. I remembered the figure, the haunting presence lingering in the shadows. I felt trapped, like I was being pulled into a familiar nightmare. Suddenly, the patient's eyes shot open, locking onto mine. "You let it out," he whispered, a chill dancing in his voice. My blood ran cold. "What did you say?" I asked, backing away. "Don't let it take you," he murmured before falling silent again. The room felt heavy, filled with a tension I couldn't explain. Then everything shifted. Lights flickered, the air grew thick, and I heard the distant echo of voices, my old friends from the night shift. Panic surged in me. I needed to get out, to escape this feeling, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. That's when I saw it. The figure. In the corner of the room, just beyond my line of sight, shrouded in darkness. A wave of fear crashed over me. I had to find a way out before it was too late. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The figure loomed larger as I tried to comprehend what I was seeing. Darkness twisted around it, almost as if the shadows themselves were alive. "Get away from him!" Tara shouted, her voice slicing through the thick air like a knife. I turned to her, confused. She seemed unfazed, focused on the patient. "We need to stabilize him. Don't just stand there." I shook my head, trying to shake off the fear. "But the figure, what figure?" Tara demanded, her eyes narrowing. I hesitated. Was this real, or was I just seeing things? Before I could answer, the patient's body convulsed. He jerked violently, and for a moment, I thought he might be seizing. I felt a pull towards him, a strange sense of empathy. I moved closer, drawn in by the fear in his eyes. "Help me," he croaked again, louder this time. "You're the only one." My mind raced. I thought I'd left all this behind. I didn't want to become entangled with that presence again. As I focused on the patient, I felt the weight of all my nightmares flooding back. The figure in the dark. The voices I heard in my sleep. "Focus on each other," Tara urged, voice sharp. "We can't lose him." The lights flickered again. I could barely make out the patient's features, but he seemed lost in some other realm. His gaze broke from mine, and he stared past me, his expression shifting from fear to something darker, more knowing. Isolation set in. I felt a chill crawl over my skin. I glanced behind me again, checking for the figure, but the corner was empty. Still, I felt watched. "Tara, I think something's wrong here. I think we're in danger." She shot me a perplexed look, then turned back to the patient. "His heart rate is stabilizing, but what does this have to do with us?" "Focus." But I couldn't. I felt like I was losing grip on reality. As my eyes darted around the room, I saw it again, movement in the shadows. Something unfathomable was lurking, just out of reach, taunting me with its presence. And then, without a word, the patient sat up suddenly. "You shouldn't trust her," he hissed, his voice deepening unnaturally. "She's already part of it." I froze, and for a second, time stopped. The air in the room shifted, turning electric with tension. Tara was oblivious, furiously jotting down notes, but I felt the walls closing in. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Before I could even process how to react, the room darkened. Panic set in. "Tara, we need to get out," I shouted, but the tendrils of fear wound tighter around my chest. My vision blurred. And just like that, everything went dark. I came back to awareness slowly, the low beeping of machines surrounding me like an ominous soundtrack. I blinked a few times, disoriented. The lights were back on, casting harsh shadows across the room. But Tara was gone. "Where is everyone?" I mumbled, my voice raspy. The patient lay back on the bed, his eyes closed, and though he looked peaceful, something about him felt wrong. The air was thick with an unshakable tension. I staggered to my feet, trying to find my balance. I felt as if I had just woken from a nightmare, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still caught in one. I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus. "Tara?" I called out, but no answer came. The room appeared empty, save for the patient and me. The monitor continued to beep steadily, but the stillness felt heavy, pressing against my chest. I hesitated, then crept closer to the patient's bed. "Can you hear me?" I asked softly. His eyes flicked open, filled with something unsettling. "You're still here," he whispered, a grin curling on his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "Why didn't you listen?" I took a step back, unease washing over me. What did he mean? Thoughts raced through my mind, grappling with the memory of his earlier words about Tara. "Where's Tara?" I demanded, my voice rising. "What did you mean before?" The patient tilted his head as if he were considering my question. "Tara is part of it," he said slowly. "And now so are you." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I suddenly regretted my curiosity. Before I could respond, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. Then they returned, and I gasped at the sight before me. The patient had moved, now sitting upright, no longer under the covers but standing beside the bed, his body rigid like a marionette with strings pulled too tight. "Get away from him." Tara's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. I spun around, relief and confusion flooding me as I saw her reappear at the doorway, looking disheveled and wide-eyed. "What happened?" I stammered, instinctively stepping toward her. "You vanished." "I was checking the monitors." "Something's wrong with him," she shouted, her gaze darting to the patient beside me, who remained oddly still. "Don't engage with him, he's manipulating you." My heart slammed in my chest. My instincts fought against Tara's words, mixing fear with an undeniable curiosity. "But he warned me about you. Is that true? Are you part of this?" The shadows began to swell around the edges of the room, creeping closer to us. I could feel the temperature drop sharply as if the air itself was growing heavy with some unseen presence. I glanced back at the patient, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. "I know you're scared," he said, his voice a sickly sweet whisper. "But you have to see the truth." And then the lights flickered one last time before everything went dark once more. The darkness wrapped around me, thick as fog. I could hear my own breath, ragged and quick. I reached out, trying to find something solid, anything that would anchor me. Panic clawed at my throat. Then, a soft glow returned, illuminating the room. But this time, everything felt different. The patient stood against the wall, his smile wider and more sinister. Tara was beside me, her eyes darting everywhere, searching for something just out of reach. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to get out, now." But the way the patient moved slow, deliberate made me hesitate. "What do you want?" I asked him, my voice shaking. "I want you to understand," he replied, his tone dripping with malice. "This is not what it seems." Tara pulled me back, her grip fierce. "Don't listen to him. It's just a trick." I wanted to believe her, but curiosity gnawed at me. What did he mean? What was true? Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and for a brief moment, I saw shadows shift behind the patient. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I saw: a figure, indistinct, just beyond the light's reach. "Do you see it?" the patient asked, a glint in his eye. "You're starting to get it." "No!" Tara shouted, panic rising in her voice. "He's trying to control you." I took a step back from both of them, the weight of their conflicting words pressing on me. Then the figure lurched closer, too fast for me to process. I squinted into the darkness, and that's when I saw it: a woman, her face distorted in terror. "Help me!" she cried, reaching out as if she was trapped in a cage of shadows. My heart skipped. "What do you want?" I shouted back. "Who are you?" "I was like you," she gasped, her voice fading. "You must leave before it's too late." The patient moved again, stretching toward her. "You're not supposed to warn him," he said, his voice turning sharp. "You've been here too long." Tara tugged on my arm. "We have to go. Now." I hesitated, caught between the pleading woman and the unyielding patient. "But no buts," she shouted, urgency cutting through her fear. "We don't know what happens next. We're in danger." Before I could respond, the lights blinked out again, plunging us into a suffocating darkness. The air buzzed with anxiety, and I felt a cold breath ghost over my neck. I spun around, but there was nothing, just that feeling of being watched, an unseen presence lurking. Then everything went dark. In that silence, a whisper echoed through the void. "You can't run from the truth." When the lights flickered back on, the room was empty. The patient, Tara, and the woman all gone. The monitors around me beeped steadily, mocking my confusion. I was alone. A chill settled in my chest. Something was very wrong, and I needed answers. But where would I find them? I blinked, trying to shake off the confusion that settled over me like a heavy blanket. My heart thudded in my chest as I looked around the room, half expecting everyone to appear again. But the only company I had was the steady beep of the monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic. I stumbled toward the door, pushing it open with shaky hands. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, and an unsettling silence filled the space. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Had something just happened? Or had I been trapped in a bad dream? As I stepped out, a flicker of movement caught my eye. At the end of the corridor, a shadow darted past the window. I hesitated, my skin prickling. Was it just my imagination? Maybe it was the aftermath of fear getting to me. I took a cautious step forward, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread. "Tara?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the empty hallway. No answer. Pushing past the feeling of panic, I glanced into a nearby room. Empty. Another. Empty. Each one left me feeling more and more isolated. I turned down another corridor, hoping to find someone. I needed Tara. I needed backup. That's when I heard a soft, muffled cry coming from a room at the far end. Instinct kicked in, and I moved toward the sound. My breath quickened, and I couldn't ignore the uneasiness settling in my gut. When I got to the doorway, the door was ajar. I peered inside, but all I could see was the moving shadow against the wall, and it was not alone. Another figure stood beside it, and I felt a rush of vertigo wash over me. "Please, help me," a voice gasped. It was the woman from before, the one trapped in shadows. But this time, she looked different. Her face was clearer, though terror still lingered in her eyes. "Are you okay?" I managed to ask, stepping inside. "What's happening? I'm running out of time. You must believe me. The patient is not what he seems." Her voice was desperate. Then her eyes shifted behind me, and her expression shifted to sheer panic. "Hurry. He's coming." I turned, my heart racing. Through the doorway stood the patient, his eerie smile back, wider than before. "I see you've made a new friend," he said, his voice low. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen. The woman's eyes darted back and forth. "You need to leave, it's a trap." The patient took a slow step forward, and something in my gut twisted. I didn't know what to believe anymore. "What do you want?" I shouted, feeling the walls closing in on me. He leaned closer, his smile widening until it looked painful. "I just want you to join us." Then everything went dark again. As silence enveloped me once more, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, a sudden chill cascading over my skin. I needed to escape this nightmare, but the thought of Tara and that woman pushed me to stay put, to fight for some sort of truth amidst the chaos. Just then, a cold hand gripped my shoulder, and I turned to find myself face to face with an empty hallway. "Your truth is waiting," came the distant echo of a voice, and a shudder ran through me. I was left hanging, suspended between the known and the unknown. Whatever was happening, I had to find Tara, I had to understand, or I might lose everything. The darkness faded slowly, and I realized I was still standing in the corridor, my breath heavy and labored. I blinked, striving to gather my thoughts. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. I needed to focus. "Okay, think," I whispered to myself. The words felt small, drowning in the peculiar stillness. The patient had vanished, and so had the woman. I needed to find Tara and get back to safety. I turned back toward the main hallway, scanning for any signs of movement or familiar voices. Nothing. Not even the mechanical hums of machines. I stepped carefully, straining my ears for sounds. The silence felt like a presence of its own, as if it were taunting me. Then, I heard it again, a faint whimper echoing from somewhere deeper in the building. My pulse quickened. Was it the woman? Tara? I had to follow the sound. I tore down the corridor, heart racing, rounding a corner that led to a darkened waiting area. Just as I entered, the lights flickered above me. I froze. Had I imagined it? Or was I losing my grip on reality? "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. A low moan floated back to me. "I'm coming." I moved towards the source of the noise, feeling the chill crawl up my spine. The waiting area was scattered with chairs, their upholstery worn and frayed. In the far corner, I could make out a huddled figure. Tara? I crept closer, hope flooding my veins. The shape lifted its head, revealing a tear-streaked face lit by the flickering lights. It was a nurse I vaguely recognized from earlier shifts, her uniform disheveled. "Help me please," she gasped, her voice trembling. "There's something wrong with the patients." "What do you mean?" I asked, looking over my shoulder. "What's happening? Where's Tara?" "Everyone's changing," she stammered, eyes wild with fear. "The patient you saw, he's not just a patient." "He's..." Before she could finish, a loud crash echoed from the other end of the waiting room, shattering the tense atmosphere. We both jumped. It sounded like a door had been slammed open. "Get down!" I shouted, pulling the nurse behind a row of chairs. My heart raced as I peered around the edge, watching the shadows flutter against the walls. That's when I saw it. The patient, or what used to be the patient, emerged from the darkness. His once smooth face was twisted, bones protruding sharply beneath his skin as if he had been drained of all humanity. "Where are you hiding?" he sing-songed, his voice dripping with malice. "Join me, join us." I felt my breath quicken as cold dread pooled in my stomach. I couldn't let him find us. "Stay here," I whispered to the nurse, though my voice trembled. I needed to distract him, to lead him away. I took a shaky breath and scrambled for the opposite exit. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed in my ears like thunder. "Hey!" I shouted, hoping to draw his attention. He turned to me, eyes gleaming with a predatory delight. "There you are." I bolted, every nerve screaming as I dashed down the nearest hallway, adrenaline fueling my flight. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't look back. I had to find Tara, figure out what was going on before it swallowed me whole. Then I spotted a flicker of light further down. Could it be an exit? I pushed forward, desperation coursing through me. But just as I reached the light, another door slammed shut, trapping me again in the suffocating darkness. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding. I could hear him, feel him getting closer. I wasn't safe. Not yet. But something told me that whatever lay beyond that door might either save me or seal my fate forever. I pressed my hands against the cool metal of the door, my breath hitching in my throat. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the distant hollow thuds of footsteps. They were getting closer, and I needed to act. My heart raced as panic clawed at my mind. The flickering light illuminated just enough to reveal the door's frame, its edges chipped and worn. I pushed down on the handle, my pulse racing with every soft click. Locked. I stared at it for a moment, wondering if I could find something to break through. Then I heard it again, the voice. "Where are you hiding?" The mockery edged my fear with something sharper. He was close. I needed to escape. I darted back into the shadows of the corridor, desperate to find another way out. Each hurried step echoed off the walls, but I knew I couldn't stop. My eyes darted from side to side, searching for anything that could offer a lifeline. Suddenly, I spotted a small, glass-enclosed room off to my left. The staff lounge. Its door hung slightly ajar. I slipped inside, feeling the cool air wash over me, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere outside. I turned to scan the room, scanning for anything that could serve as a weapon or a tool. A coffee pot sat on the counter, and a few mugs lay nearby. The sight was almost laughable considering my predicament. I needed something stronger. That's when I noticed the cabinets. I moved quickly, throwing them open one by one. Most were filled with paperwork, old supplies, clutter no one had tossed out. But at the back of the last cabinet, I spotted a sturdy metal flashlight. I grabbed it, my fingers trembling around the handle. Turning it on, I breathed a sigh of relief as the beam illuminated the corners of the room. At least I had some control over the darkness. I needed to stay aware and alert. Someone or something was toying with me, and I wasn't about to be caught off guard again. Just as I backed away from the cabinet, the lights in the lounge flickered. My heart dropped. I turned to see the patient standing in the doorway, the twisted grin on his face wide as he stepped into the room. He wouldn't let me out easily. "Join us," he sang again, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. "It's much nicer on this side." I clutched the flashlight in one hand and my breath caught in my throat. The room was too small for both of us. I needed to back away, to find another way out. But just behind him, there were shadows that moved shapes I couldn't fully make out. I felt a surge of doubt, but it fueled my resolve. I raised the flashlight, aiming the beam at him and the figures behind. "Stay away!" I shouted, urgency tightening my voice. His smile widened, and with it, a cold wave of dread washed over me. "You don't understand, do you? There's no escape. We're all part of it now. Then, everything around me fell dark once more. The flashlight flickered and then died, plunging me into the abyss of silence. I could hear their whispers, echoing like a dreadful mantra. "Run," a faint voice barely broke through the darkness, but I couldn't tell who it was. My instincts kicked in. I turned to run again, deeper into the shadows of the hospital. But I had no idea where I was going. As I sprinted through the void, I knew I was trapped in this twisted nightmare. But it didn't end there. I could feel eyes on me as I pushed forward. I was no longer alone, and what lay ahead might be worse than what I was fleeing. I raced down the narrow corridor, my breaths coming in shallow gasps. The darkness felt heavy, almost alive. Each step echoed, a reminder that I was not alone, or maybe it was just my fear amplifying every sound. I had to keep moving, but I had no clue where I was going. Everywhere looked the same, empty walls and flickering fluorescent lights gave the place a ghostly feel. As I rounded a corner, I caught sight of an emergency exit sign glowing faintly down the hall. Hope surged through me. That had to be it. Relief mixed with adrenaline as I quickened my pace, but just then, I heard it again. A low murmur, a symphony of whispers. My heart sank, the echoes were getting closer. I could feel the weight of their presence, pressing down on me as I approached the exit. I fumbled for the door handle, urging my fingers to work faster, but the sound behind me grew louder, more distinct. "Let us in," they pleaded, and I realized with horror they weren't just whispers, they were voices. I cursed under my breath, swinging the door open. To my dismay, it led to a stairwell, the steps dark and uninviting. I hesitated, torn. It was a risk, but I had no other choice. Once I stepped inside, the door closed behind me with a heavy thud. The only illumination came from the emergency lights, casting eerie shadows across the walls. I trudged down the steps, listening intently for any sign of movement. The whispers faded slightly, but they were still there, woven into the silence. "Come back," they echoed. "We need you." I clenched my fists. I would not look back. At the bottom, I found a heavy, rusted door, marked with a faded sign that read, "Staff only, authorized personnel only." Against my better judgment, I pushed it open, expecting to find more darkness, but instead, it revealed a small storage room. Shelves lined with medical supplies and boxes filled the space. It was cluttered but familiar. I scanned the room and my eyes landed on a first aid kit. Circling the shelves, I found it and opened it quickly. Inside lay gauze, antiseptic, and, thankfully, a pair of scissors. I tucked them into my pocket, my heart racing with the knowledge that I might need them to defend myself if things got worse. Then I noticed an old floor plan of the hospital hanging on the wall. I stepped closer, examining it under the weak light. My gut twisted. The layout was confusing, but I saw a connection. There was a sub-basement, marked with a bright red restricted access. My instincts screamed at me, maybe that was where I could find answers, or maybe, that's where they wanted me to go. Just then, the door creaked open behind me. I whipped around to see the patient from before, backlit by the dim hall light. He had company now. 3 other figures stood behind him, their faces obscured, but the intent in their eyes was clear. "Found you," he said, stepping forward. "You shouldn't have run. Get away from me." I shouted, my pulse quickening again. I reached for the scissors, but I knew they wouldn't be enough. They advanced slowly, and I backed away until I hit the shelves. Panic surged. Before I could think, I dove past him, crashing through the door and into the darkness of the hallway. My heart thundered against my ribs. I didn't know what waited behind me, but I couldn't stop. I had stumbled into something much bigger than I realized, and I wasn't sure I could escape its grip this time. I dashed down the stairs, heart racing, desperate to put as much distance between myself and those figures as possible. Each step echoed ominously in the stillness, the air thick with tension. Behind me, the whispers grew louder, beckoning me closer to the depths I didn't want to explore. "You can't escape us," they taunted. My mind raced with a cacophony of possibilities. I reached the bottom floor and found myself in a dark corridor lined with heavy metal doors. Panic clawed at my throat as I frantically twisted the handles, but each door was locked tight. "Why is this happening?" I muttered to myself. Hadn't I left all of this behind? Why was I drawn back into this nightmare? Then, a flickering light caught my attention at the end of the hall. I hurried toward it, hoping it would provide an exit. As I got closer, I saw a large panel labeled sub-basement access. A red light flashed above it, but the door stood ajar, a sliver of darkness spilling out. Gathering my courage, I pushed the door fully open and stepped inside. The room was small and cluttered, filled with dusty medical supplies and outdated equipment. My eyes darted around, searching for anything that could help me make sense of what was happening. It smelled stale, a heavy odor that masked any signs of life. A secure room, perhaps this would be the sanctuary I needed. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure moving among the shadows. My breath caught as I turned. It was the woman from before, her face pale and drawn. "You mustn't linger," she urged, pointing toward the back of the room. "They're coming." Whispers flooded my ears again, and I felt an icy fingers trailing down my spine as a feeling of dread washed over me. "Who? What are you talking about?" I shot back, torn between terror and a desperate need for answers. In the murky shadows, the outlines of the figures emerged, the patient and the others, creeping forward with chilling intent. "You shouldn't listen to her," the patient said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "She brings despair. Join us, Jake." "Jake? No. I want to become like you," I shouted, panic surging through me again. I felt trapped, the walls closing in as the whispers grew louder, echoing like a relentless siren. "Choose, Jake," the woman cried, her urgency piercing through the din of voices. "You must choose who you want to believe." In that moment of chaos, clarity surged through me. The distinction wasn't just between the woman and the patient, it was between fear and truth, capture and salvation. I remembered Tara's voice, her insistence that we needed to escape. I took a deep breath, gritting my teeth, and charged toward the door. "I choose to fight," I yelled, elbowing past the figures as they reached for me. I felt cold fingertips graze my sleeve, but I powered through, fueled by determination. Freedom was just ahead. I thrust open the door leading back into the main corridor and sprinted forward, heart hammering against my chest. Behind me, the cacophony roared louder. "You can't leave us." Their voices screamed in unison. The light above flickered, casting shadows that twisted into grotesque shapes. I could hear them gaining on me, a chorus blending into theatrical madness. I pushed myself to run faster, darting around corners, praying there was a way out. I stumbled onto the main floor, pushing through a set of double doors. A sudden blur of light caused my eyes to squint against its brightness. The atmosphere shifted, the air clearing slightly. I turned, breathless, scanning the area for signs of escape. But then, in the far corner, in the shadow of the farthest exit, stood Tara. But as I approached, the sense of dread returned, and I hesitated. Who was I really running toward? Was it her, or is it something worse? "Tara!" I called, relief washing over me. But then I noticed her face was blank, her eyes dull and empty. "Help me," I begged. "You should join us, Jake," she replied, the patient's smile curling back into her features. I froze. The air around me turned electric, thick with an overwhelming pressure. "No," my instincts screamed. I backed away slowly, unsure of where to go next. Confusion enveloped me, blurring the lines between the familiar and the unrecognizable. Had I truly escaped the horrors of my past only to face them again? Or was this simply a reckoning, a loop I couldn't break free from? In a moment of desperation, I turned and bolted down the corridor, chasing fading whispers and shadows. "You can't have me. I won't join you," I shouted into the abyss. And as I ran into the uncertain night, uncertainty ebbed and flowed around me, refusing to let go. I still don't know what was real, what was true, or if I had truly escaped. I only knew that I couldn't dwell in the shadows anymore, even if the shadows still whispered my name.